Greetings, Hempster. Thank you for tuning in to another Hemp episode of Hemp Aware Radio. This is your Hemp-entrepreneurial host, here to empower your hemposphere with another inspiring episode talking to Ray Kaderli. He's the founder of the Hemp Build Network and the current sitting president of the Hemp Building Association. And his role with the USHBA is to be an advocate, of course, for collaborators, with industry professionals to advance the use of hemp materials and methods specifically related to building and construction. And so this is one of my favorite topics when it comes to hemp. And I'm really excited to dive into what inspired him to get involved in this industry, what he's currently doing to help move it forward. And with his role he's based out of New Braunfels, Texas, by the way. And he's got this really cool network, the Hemp Build Network, and they're working on the Hemp Build School. And he's an intricate part of the Hemp Build magazine, which we're going to get into here in a little bit. He emphasizes the vast opportunities within the hemp industry, highlighting benefits, such as carbon sequestration, energy efficiency, job production, environmental stewardship, economic growth, and improved health and safety when it comes to our building environments. And Kaderli is, committed to fostering the simultaneous development of hemp-based projects and professionals, aiming to mature the industry's capabilities and integrate hemp into mainstream construction practices. So it's really exciting to have him on the show. He's an amazing educator. He's got plenty of YouTube videos out there if you want to go get hemp-educated, all the really powerful information that he has. But thank you so much for being on the show today, Ray. What's hempening?
Oh, man, that was quite an introduction. I don't know what we have left to talk about. We can unpack a lot of details, but no, I really appreciate you having us on, and there's a lot of exciting momentum that's building, and so that's definitely fun to unpack, because I know many of us are entrepreneurs, and we like to try our best to see around corners and to see what's coming, and to put a preparation out there to where we can capitalize and make a profit on things that do good by ourselves in the business aspect, as well as further an industry that we all enjoy being a part of. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. And being business owners, entrepreneurs, profit is essential. But what's really cool about this industry and meeting people like yourself is that we really look at the triple bottom line. It's, what is this doing for the people? What is this doing for the planet? And can we make a profit? And, at Hemp Aware, we like to say we're here to make a difference and a dollar. So without that change in your pocket, how are you going to make change in the world? And so really being a steward for that transformation, I think, is what you're about. And that's why I'm excited to introduce our listeners to you. And so the first topic I would love to cover is, tell me about your background. Like, what is your official training, and what was your career before getting into hemp, and how did you get involved and introduced to this plant in the first place?
It's a bit of a circuitous route. And so I love this question, because everybody's got what I call their origin story. My kids and I were fans of all the different superhero stories, and I always tell people, it's like, what's your origin story? And so I came into the hemp space through the door of building and construction, and then what drew me to that were mainly two things. We were looking to build investment properties to hold as rental properties, just single family homes, just like playing Monopoly when we were kids. You build single family homes and hold them. And so that's what we're looking to do. Now, I've done a lot in my career as a real estate broker. I've done a lot of fix and flips. I've done renovation. I've held some properties as rental properties. But we wanted to build new, and we wanted to build sustainable. In the previous lifetime, I had a regional recycling facility we would grind up trees and woody waste and leaves and things and process those into mulch and compost. So I really liked the environmental steward aspect of it. So stewardship has always been high on my motivation list, and I like the different motivations that you listed, because I actually have an investment fund that I started, Triple P Fund, for profit, people, and planet. And so that's something that we're launching as we speak. And then the prototype is to build with hemp. And then how I became interested in using hemp as a key innovation is that it's got two main characteristics that I like from a landlord's point of view that wants to hold a property long term, and that's efficiency. So if I rent that unit with utilities included, say, then I gain extra income every month out of every efficiency that I create. So that's money in my pocket. And then there's the durability. I mentioned I did a lot of fix and flip properties, and then I saw from the inside out as demo was going through these properties, and many of them were, you know, 20, 30, 40 years old, and then things were worn out. There was mold in the walls. And so I saw that side of things, and I knew that there was a better way to do a lot of the building material systems that were out there from what we do in a conventional build. And so that got me into the door. And then I always like to watch business trends. And this is what just really pulled me in, is when the 2018 Farm Bill passed and I saw hemp as a legalized cultivatable crop. And I knew that that was going to be a big deal. And the way I described that, it's like we all just discovered trees, and there's lots of different things that you can make. And so I began to going down the rabbit trail on different things and exploring different opportunities, but all the while keeping it focused on the construction side. I saw a lot of people go a mile wide and an inch deep and burn out. And I knew to stay in my lane and not try to get out of that in all these opportunities. It can be quite overwhelming. They capture your imagination, they capture your spirit, that desire to create and to explore, and then you go in too many different directions. And so that's why I narrowed my focus, and that's where we've stayed. And then that's followed true to the trade association. The U.S. Hemp Building Association is one of those that does well to stay in its lane. And then that's why we've had some good momentum and progress. And then I'm very excited about what we've accomplished in that as well. And so that's how I came into it. On the horizon for me is just projects. Projects equal progress. And then that will enable everyone to cultivate better ideas, to showcase scenarios to where that momentum can build for everyone. So that's me in a nutshell at the current moment.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's really neat to see the different backgrounds that people come from before they get into the hemp industry. And being in real estate, you said you were exposed to like fix and flips and demolitions and seeing the toxic mold and asbestos and lead and formaldehyde and all these toxic compounds that are in our existing building materials. It's mind-blowing that people are even, staying alive these days, living in these toxic domes, So it's really inspiring to know that you took a leap and took a risk, because hemp is this taboo thing that has been shoved under the petroleum-based rug for so many years. And now it's come to the surface, and professionals, people that are experts and authorities are seeing the benefit and the value. And so doing what you're doing, staying in your lane, is extremely powerful. As we say in marketing, the riches are in the niches. And so anybody listening to this show, if you have a hemp company and you want to do well for yourself and continue growing, just like Ray said, try not to go too wide and get really focused on one thing, get really good at that, and become known for that thing. And that's how you'll get really big. Like, for example, Amazon, they did one thing in the beginning. They just sold books, and they did that really, really well, to the point now where they're the largest e-commerce business online in the world. So one other thing that you mentioned was the trade association, which I do want to get into here momentarily. And you've got the Hemp Build Network, which I want to talk about. But before we get into that, to kind of take a step back and look at your childhood, do you see any particular memory that feels like maybe a sneak peek of you getting into this world, or was, this totally a random choice? I know you said it was kind of a sequential process, but do you feel like there was a seed that was planted as a child, or is there a memory that you can recall that led you to this place?
Well, yeah, there's a couple of things. And as a young boy, we were talking about the San Antonio-Austin corridor. And the family farm where I grew up backed right up to Interstate 35. And it was a family property, a generation back, and then now owned by my family. And then I could literally watch those two metropolitan areas grow together in my backyard. And I saw a lot of opportunity, as an area would grow. And then I also saw a lot of farmland go by the way of commercial property. And, now, you do need to develop property to create opportunities, but it's also something that should be done with a certain amount of wisdom. And then that started to weave that thread of stewardship into my mindset. And so that was something that was very important to me. And then I started out doing that. And then that followed through with the business that we started, and then in the recycling side of things. And so I saw what real estate could do. I saw the need for stewardship, and then those things kind of just married up together. And then I started to see a lot of farmland get developed into commercial property. And then to create opportunities, you do need to develop property, and you do need to create businesses, and those need to be somewhere. And then, but the way it was done was kind of a shame sometimes. And so you see good farmland be poorly utilized. And then I saw the traffic increase. I also saw some of the benefits increase. There's more restaurants to go to, there's more things to do. And then there's a point where there's enough progress, and then there's too much progress. And then to ride that line is a good line to ride, instead of struggling to make any progress. And so I'd rather choke on opportunity than really be starved for it. And that was one of the things that that area really struggled with, was growth. And then I saw the land stewardship come into play on that from watching it happen in my backyard. The farm where we grew up is now, large RV storages and stuff like that. Very unromantic, very slap in the face of environmental stewardship, but it was profitable to sell. And when we sold, the new owners could do what they wanted to with it. And so I learned a lot. But before we had that transaction, we did have the recycling facility, where we took in trees and organic material and made mulch and compost and blended soils. And I learned a lot about stewardship in that. And that was one of those foundational things that thread of stewardship was woven through my psyche on quite an early age with that. And then I learned what real estate could do for building wealth. And so I started to pay attention at a young age, and it's no exaggeration that I've been paying attention very specifically to real estate since the 7th grade. I remember there was a research project that was a part, and there was me and 2 other friends, and we had to do a presentation on the San Antonio-Austin corridor, and it was reported to be like the next Los Angeles as the area kind of grew and all the edges of the map filled in. And that was happening rapidly, but I started paying attention to it in the 7th grade. And so paying attention to real estate, along with the 4-H projects that we had, built a nice entrepreneurial spirit. I like to tell the story about, I was a young 4-H'er. My sister was a little bit older than me, but, we raised animals, and we showed them in the youth show and the county fairs all around the area and stuff like that. And my father, he had his college degree in range management, so he could help manage the genetics and a lot of the breeding program and stuff. And so we enjoyed doing that. And, I remember I didn't know much about sex, but I knew that I owned the mommy sheep, that when they got together with the daddy sheep, they made a baby sheep. And then that was my baby sheep. And then I sold it. I remember looking at the money in my hand, and I looked at my dad, and I looked at the money, and I looked back at my dad and said, how quick till they can do that again? And so it was an entrepreneurial spirit was born. And I've always enjoyed doing things to where you can look for scenarios where 1 + 1 = 3. And then if you bring that to fruition, then you get the fruits of your labor. And that's always intrigued me, and I really enjoyed that. So that's a bit of my history and some of the influences along the way.
That is so neat. That's a perfect example of prosper and multiply. So very, very cool. So you had that real early inspiration to get into real estate. and just being in the country, seeing the livestock, the animals, becoming a steward of the land was just very ingrained in your childhood psyche. So it totally makes sense that it would lead you into this journey of hemp and utilizing this as your vehicle for continuing that journey. Now, have there been any really big influences on you? I know you mentioned your projects for People, Planet, Profit. Was there anyone other than, say, your personal experience with the livestock and your family being on the land? Like, was there a teacher or a mentor or anybody in your life that helped inspire your personal philosophy?
Yeah, there's a few, other than the ones in my family. Like I said, my parents were very instrumental. My mother's an educator. I enjoy the education process, both learning and teaching. My dad, he was more on the range science, and he really enjoyed that. And then, he went through a process of building out a business for the logistics side. And so when we were creating compost and mulch and soil blends, he handled a lot of the trucking and then the logistics side of it. And then I was managing some of the land aspect of the business and more of the retail. And so there's always been that business development side. But a few of the other mentors outside of the family there's one ranch called the Bamberger Ranch near Johnson City, Texas. And the former CEO of Church's Fried Chicken, of all places, made his money in the fried chicken business, but he went out and bought, I think it's just a little over 3,000 acres of the most worthless land that he could find on purpose to restore it. And then now it is, I forget the structure to the ranch, but it's one to where it will never come out of that. So it's like it's a legacy scenario where its purpose is teaching and stewardship. And then his name's J. David Bamberger, and he was a big influence on that stewardship thread. And that's something that has held through to me. And then another gentleman, Malcolm Beck, founder of Gardenville, he was a colleague and a competitor, but he was a little bit older. His kids were, classmates of mine in school, but he was always, when you would go out and tour his place, and he had industry tours out there, and he had a lot of different things where he was doing things like making compost tea. Well, if you were making compost tea in the mid 90s, I mean, you might as well have been dancing around a fire with a bone in your nose. It was exotic. Nobody was doing it. But there he was, and he had all these jugs set up, and then, that's compost tea. And we're like, well, I'm not drinking it. And then, now one of the main things that would be a high value input is making compost tea and then using that as a soil amendment. And so I enjoyed drinking the early renditions of that Kool-Aid that, again, spark those, I guess, motivations to dig a little deeper. And then that's where I see a lot of people come into this space. They know how big the space is. They can drive from, Mexico to Canada and just see how many acres and miles of cornfield, wheat field, and cotton you pass. And then this is a new crop. And then you can do the math on a road trip across this country on just how big the opportunity is. And so that is something that will capture the human spirit and not let go of you. So be careful. You watch enough YouTube videos, and you too will be building some houses in an area near you. And so there's a lot of things to learn. And with I tell you what, the one thing that's accelerating that is the coming on of AI, to where, I remember as a young man trying to research and learn. I had a question one day about the organics business that I was in, and I had something curious, and within a couple of minutes on my phone, I was finding out all the information that would have taken me a couple of years of reading periodicals, going to trade shows, interviewing people, talking to people like that. So the capability of having an entrepreneurial idea, having resources that will give you the foundation and the framework for the genesis of an idea in and of itself and help you take it to marketplace is amazing. And, I remember when a Commodore 64 computer was exotic. And, for those listening in that are younger, then they'll have to look that up and see what that is. But that was, computers, you had to check out the calculators because they were so expensive when I was doing algebra. So, it's neat to see how that's come along.
Most definitely. And to take that vein a little further and getting into business and marketing and what it takes to run a hemp company, you're the founder of the Hemp Build Network, and you're also the president of the U.S. Hemp Building Association. Is there something that you've come across, some major lesson that you've learned getting into this industry, running a business, that you feel like every business owner should eventually learn?
Yeah. The way I describe it is going back to our childhood, we learned that the little paper puzzles connect the dots. And I think that's one of the most important games that we play as children, is connecting the dots, because there's a lot of information that's out there. We can drown in data and information, and then it's fed to us, and then we get our little hit of dopamine, and then on we go, and we like and we share. But if we can't connect ideas to where several small ideas come together to make a bigger idea, or one that we use differently, then we're just consumers of interesting things. And so one thing I like about the trade association and connecting to the industry is we were able to take a real hard look at what are the missing pieces. What do we need to achieve the outcome? Successful projects, one right after the other. Professionals doing successful projects, one right after the other. Supply chain feeding what the professionals are designing and then building, so that we've got projects one right after the other. And then we just went backwards. And then they created educational programs, or the ability to have education programs. And so now those dots can be connected from a design professional to a construction professional that will execute and deliver that build. And then the consumer connecting to making the phone ring, either with a builder or a designer, and them wanting it. And so if the market doesn't want it, it doesn't matter how good it is. If the market doesn't want it, then you're toast. And then fortunately, we're very entrepreneurial in the United States. And then I don't care what it is. If the market wants it, then the market's going to get it. And we'll do our best to make that happen. And so what we need to do is have the marketplace wanting the right things for the right reasons. And then it's just a simple process. And then the good thing about the trends in the marketplace today is more and more people want the right things for the right reasons. And then as we educate them, now they know more specifically what to want. They want health. And then if COVID taught us anything, it's the effects of something that you can't see on your health, and the effect of your house on your health, because you were cooped up in your house all day long, every day. And so people have this perspective on value and health and stewardship that are coming into play. And it's a natural learning process for something that the marketplace wants to learn. And so that's where we become good educators, and where individuals like yourself with a microphone are one of the most important things. And so I really enjoy coming on podcasts to share that story, because it is one of the most important things, is to bring that to the marketplace.
Absolutely. Yeah, we don't know what we don't know. And until we raise enough awareness, that's the first stage of any journey, is becoming aware. And typically it's becoming aware of a problem. Like that's, any good story starts with a good problem, a good challenge, a good struggle, that we have to overcome, and then begin that first step on the journey. And so you discovered this massive problem with homes being toxic and being in real estate all these years. And so you formed the Hemp Build Network and eventually became the president of the US HBA. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of the structure of the Hemp Build Network? I know you've got Hemp Build schools that you're doing workshops. How can people get involved with you? How can they do business with you? Give me a sense of kind of the structure of the business and how you're running things. And then I know there's the Hemp Build Mag that you're somewhat a part of. So if you want to mention that too.
Yeah, I'll start with Hemp Build Mag, and because it is a good illustration of how everybody comes into this space with their own background in tow. And then mine was real estate, and so that's what interested me. Mine was investment, and so I'm looking at investment scenarios and investment opportunities that, you know, that entrepreneurial spirit where 1 + 1 = 3, and then tying it to a real estate asset, and then tying that to something that's profitable. So investors who want to deploy capital and make an impact with their money, instead of just investing for profit, they want to make an impact in people's lives and the stewardship of the natural resources of the planet. Now they can. And so that's where I came in. But my colleague, Jean, who started the Hemp Build magazine, hempbuildmag.com, she's a journalist. And then when she saw this, it was like, holy cow, this is the story of the century. And then she wanted to cover it. And then again, with technology, she didn't have to go start a publication and a printing press and everything like this. She could just be a rock solid journalist and then publish on an online magazine format, and then create a community to where people can engage and share ideas. And then that outward facing voice of an industry that reflects journalistically has done a wealth for people, because now they can find good, reliable information, stories can be shared, and then being able to have a community platform. That's only recent in the past couple of years. And I don't care if you like to work on cars of a specific make and model, or if you like to travel or whatever, there's a community for it. And then that's one of those things where we can create a community. Now, one of the big missing pieces to all of that is education. And so if you are looking to build your own home, or if you're an architect looking to branch out in the healthy and sustainable demands of a design professional, or if you want to carve out a niche, I love the saying, riches are in the niches. And if you want to set yourself apart from being able to build sustainably, build healthy homes, you know, that is something that as the market demands it, they're going to Google search it, and they need to be able to find professionals that can do that. And I do like that hemp is a sexy topic. And it definitely got me to click the post that was probably clickbait, but then there I was going down the rabbit hole, drinking the Kool-Aid all along the way. And I know many people have found that just because it's a sticky topic. It's something that was banned, it was naughty, it was, you know, all of those things that are like, oh, wow, we're building houses with it now. And or it's legal now. It's like you want to read more. And now it's coming into more commonplace. And people are realizing that it's, you know, it's fiber, it's protein, it's textile, it's all of those different things that are there. And so that education process is maturing. The marketplace is more mature. But those are some of the businesses that were along the way, from the magazine to the network. And the network is simply, I needed to be able to build the houses that I wanted to offer as an investment scenario. There were no subcontractors. There were no suppliers. And so I was subcontractor and general contractor number one. And then I am teaching and training through the school for other colleagues, because, you know, I'm very keenly aware that I can't be everyone's builder. And then I only really want to build investment properties for myself. And so now there's the rest of the population. I see the math and the environmental stewardship and the health and wealth of a nation that can happen with better building and better building science incorporated into those material choices. And so that's why there's the school to educate, and then there's the network to connect and supply, and then there's the trade association, which is kind of the liaison between the professionals, and it gives a voice in a untainted way to bring the marketplace together. You know, I'm profit motivated. I'm bringing something with a motivation for profit to the marketplace, and then try to do my best to have it be in a very forthright way, but I'm still bringing something to the marketplace. And so a trade association can have that unbiased representation of a multitude of members doing things, for example, like advocating in Washington, D.C. about the Farm Bill and some of the things that would affect the supply chain, about providing education about multiple different supply sources and techniques and methods, about installation of hempcrete, different binders, different standards, helping establish those standards to where the industry has a large umbrella under which to grow. And so that's something that I really enjoyed, the engagement of the trade association with both the farming side, and we don't focus on farming other than we're trying to be a market for what farmers create. We're really focused on engaging with individuals and professionals who are going to be building and all of the issues that they need, nothing more, nothing less, and then that's our lane. And so that's something to where that's been a fun ride, and it's been fun to see that mature and grow and have the capabilities that are very exciting on all the things that can happen over the next year. You're going to see a lot of houses and projects going up.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the massive progress. In the last 20 years that I've been watching this industry, it was real slow. And then the last, I would say 2-3 years, there's just a huge surge of interest. Contractors, architects, builders, code enforcement people, firefighters, like a lot of different industries and people are very interested in this, especially with the big push for being green and eco-friendly and sustainable and trying to source materials more locally. Like there's a huge need for this, and hemp is really fulfilling that. And the Hemp Building Association is also doing research and testing and also advocating for standardization, right? Like, how do we get this material certified? How do we get it accepted into building codes? Can you talk a little bit about that process and what that looks like and how much progress we've made in that direction?
Yeah, I'll start first with the code, and then in IRC 2024 Appendix BL. If anybody wants to do a search, they'll find that, and that's IRC 2024 Appendix BL. That is specifically for hempcrete, referred to as hemp lime as well. And then you'll be able to print that and know what has been published into it's an appendix of code. Now, in your local jurisdiction, so that's being published and then now it's being adopted. And so a lot of these municipalities, they adopt these codes on a delay. And so what gets published in 2024 might not be adopted for 1, 2, 3 years down the road, and then if at all. And then now, but the fact that it's in code and it's published, it definitely makes it easier for your permitting discussion. It's real at that point. And then so it's not like you're going in and it's like, hey, we want to do something crazy. We think you should give us permission to do something crazy. That's not the conversation you want to have. And so I permitted the house that we're finishing up in San Antonio before the code was published. And then I used engineers to stamp my plans. And then they went through all of the parameters that were needed to use that biocomposite as an insulation that happens to be hemp. And then I think a lot of people miss the mark because they go in and they use the H word, and then everybody at the local jurisdiction is like, whoa, we can't have this going on. Something bad's going to happen and it's going to be my fault. They don't care what it is. Something bad's going to happen and it's going to be their fault. And if we can go in as professionals, you know, the architects, the engineers, the contractors, and they have that professional language, and then they engage on a professional level like they're used to already, that's something that needs to happen. And then that translates over into the standards. And so as far as establishing industrial standards of measurement, so that you can have actual standards, we need a measurement method to measure the herd that we're putting into these projects. And so that's what the trade association has done, is come up with a measurement method that will be what is used to establish standards. Now, the thing to know about standards is that if you're going to cast something in place by hand versus building a block and a prefabricated scenario versus a spray method, the spray method might be very specific on what you can and can't use as far as the size and shape of the herd, where your cast in place or your prefabrication might not be as picky on the size and shape. So you'll have several different standards all using that measurement method. So right now we're engaged with the ASTM and their D37 subcommittee, which is for all things for cannabis and the hemp plant altogether. That's everything from vape cartridges to textiles to everything. And then this is to where the industries, the multiple industries, are coming together. And so if people want to have an active voice and participate, ASTM is a great place to do that. And especially if you're technically inclined and you like spreadsheets and research papers, that's your jam. And so those people will get together and come up with those things that will end up being standards in the industry. And then the code, the IRC code, which is published by ICC. And then don't ask me what all the acronyms stand for. And everybody can just like have a bunch of rapid Google tabs open at this point, and then you'll be plugged in and you'll be dialed in and you will be able to have a voice. That's the main thing, is like when the ASTM gathers, if there's 30 people in a room talking about one topic, it's usually all the experts that would be available to talk about that topic. But you definitely have a voice, and a big one. And especially for people with technical knowledge that want to either learn more or take the technical knowledge that they have and take it to the influence point, the point of influence in the industry. That's a good place to do it. And then that's something that the trade association has done, is we've looked for those points of influence, those points of inflection to where things can happen. And then that's where people can plug in. So that's one of the benefits of membership. And then just everybody getting to know each other and learn more, share ideas in forums like this.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I could spend another several hours, and I would love to have you on again in the near future so we can dive deeper into several of these topics. But to kind of bring it, and to kind of bring it home, I want to ask you maybe like 3 or 4 more questions. One being, when it comes to hemp as a building material, can you share some of the top benefits of using this material versus standard building insulation materials? And then the follow-up question is, what are some of the most common myths or misconceptions about building with hemp?
Gotcha. Yeah, I think the biggest thing right out of the gate is it being bio-based versus synthetic. Now, that's a big one. And so there's a lot of I'll use this example. Spray foam is really good insulation. If the house is ever on fire, you're pretty well dead before you get out the door. And so you've got a synthetic product that performs well, but the negative downsides, man, there's a detriment there. The thing about hemp, and I'll use hempcrete specifically, it checks everybody's check boxes. Now, there's a lot of other replacement products that are one-to-one replacements making their way into the marketplace, like hemp wool, hemp wood for flooring. And then those are fantastic one-to-one replacements, like replacing a hardwood with a compressed bio-based material that is hemp. There's replacing your fiberglass bat insulation with something that's a nonwoven that is part of the fiber plant, the fiber part of the plant, but hempcrete is one of the largest volume utilizations of hemp as a building material, and the majority of the effort gets focused on that. And then there's some other fantastic tangential products as well that are being developed, and there's a lot of good cooks in the kitchen that are coming up with things on a daily basis. And I used to be able to keep up with most of it, but I can't anymore because there's so much innovation going on. And so I'll talk about what I use the most, which is hempcrete as the key innovation. And then, there's the common things that it's, highly fire resistant, mold resistant, pest resistant, longevity, low maintenance, highly efficient. It regulates the relative humidity. There's a long laundry list. But the fact that the environmental stewardship, all the way back on the agronomy side to the farm in the soil, it checks check boxes all the way from there. So there's no negative downside to it in it coming in. And like I mentioned with spray foam, hey, it's really good here, but it's terrible over here. Hempcrete as a building material is good all along the way. And so some of the myths, and I think they're more misunderstandings than myths, but about the fact that it's super expensive, that it can be. And if you're doing it in a certain way and you have some efficiencies, supply chains not being mature and needing to import or source expensive materials, that was the case and still can be. But as of recently, when I say recently, over the last 3 to 12 months, the supply chains have matured dramatically over the last 3 to 12 months compared to where they were 1 to 2 years ago. And then that increase is going to continue to grow. And so the cost is going to come down. And so the affordability is one of the biggest things that I see people having a misunderstanding. And then it used to be where only people with means creating a large luxury home or something like that, where it was a significant cost, was the case. And then our target is building these, like I said, to be held for profit as an affordable rental property. And then that's something that if we can't do that, then, I wouldn't have made the building selection. Now I have to do certain things, like I have to be the subcontractor because there are not that many other subcontractors. That's why I'm in the education business, because though I love that type of work, I'm getting old enough to where I don't want to do it a lot. And I really appreciate other entrepreneurs that want to come in and carve out that opportunity. And so those are some of the examples along the way of the benefits and some of the myths, and things are growing.
Thank you. I agree. It's really fun to see the growth and the interest and the innovations. And like you said, I at one point was able to keep up with a lot of the new concepts and the hemp blocks and the spray cretes. And now it's just like there's so much innovation happening. It's hard to keep up with, which I appreciate, and I like to see that. So just a last couple questions. And actually, before the next question, you had mentioned this idea of a lot of people thinking it's too expensive. And one of the things I think people miss is the cost efficiency and the amount of money that's going to be saved into the future for not having to pull down drywall and re-insulate, or dealing with mold issues and therefore having to have huge medical bills. And like, what is the cost advantage into the future that you can't even really calculate, that is also quality of life benefits? Yes, you might have to invest a little bit more in the beginning, but the cost savings in the long run, isn't it tremendously more beneficial to go with hemp?
I have a colleague that's fond of saying, what's your health worth? And then if you could put a price tag on that, and then that is a definite train of thought that is nice when you're justifying an expense, but at the end of the day, it's still an expense. And if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. And so it's one of those things that it is a good mindset to have when making expenditures. But what I know about the marketplace and what I know about selling hundreds of homes is that price matters, kitchens and bathrooms matter, quality matters less than a nice kitchen. If you're going to sell a house, the quality home will be passed over for one with a gourmet kitchen. And that's just the human nature of it. So we need to be aware of our humanity on that. But, some of those, as far as it being affordable and the calculations to it, the supply chain and the network of professionals, competition is going to make us all better. It's going to make us better, and it's going to bring prices down. So the more people that come into this place, then that natural supply and demand and structure that we have that makes us all better by competing is really going to win over. And I see that taking place as we speak.
I agree. Yeah. I really, in the hemp world, I call it co-opetition, because even though we're competing against each other, we're really working collaboratively oftentimes and helping progress this industry for everyone. So to wrap up the show, I like to ask the question, Is there something that I should have asked you that I did not?
Man, there are so many things to ask. And so it's one of those things, and we talked about this a little bit. There's 100-hour-long topics that we could discuss. And so what I like to encourage people to do is get familiarity with all of the different topics. Now, if you look at hemp and cannabis, well, the word for the year is bifurcation. Are you going to do cannabinoids or are you going to do fiber grain? If you're going to do, there's a little bit of overlap because you can make building materials from some of the stems and stalks and use the biomass and stuff like that. But it's the lion's share is fiber grain for building materials. And so now that you're in fiber grain, are you in what sector? And so the questions that I would say, what not to ask is like, what are the niches that can come down? And then how do you plug your area of interest, like real estate, like journalism, like lab testing? Are you an engineer? Are you a material science person? A predecessor, Jacob Waddell, that's how he came into this, because he was a material science guy. And then he wanted to do something that would matter long-term in his life. And then that's where he came into the door. So focus on how you came into the door, and then how do you follow through on that, and then establish those niches. And then I do like the creative conversation on going through a dialogue with people. And I've walked through this buffet of opportunity quite a few times. And I enjoy having conversations with people about what could I do, and then it's kind of like, well, what do you do? And it's like, well, have you thought about this? And so I guess, how do I discover my niche is one of the favorite ones that I like to, it's worth a cup of coffee to go through the conversation. And I think a lot of people are finding very good niches that they can then go very deep on. And then that complements other people with their niche, because everybody is more mature because we've got depth. So.
Exactly. It's far more effective to go deep than it is to go wide. I mean, if you have a broken leg, you want to go to a specialist that fixes bones. You don't want to go to a general doctor. So, it's a perfect example of really becoming an expert in one field. It's good to have knowledge on the other areas, but be known for one thing and dive really deep into that. And like you said, relate it to what you're already good at. Whatever your background is, whatever you've studied, see how hemp integrates into that and take that and run with it. I totally agree with that. And one other comment, like just on the topic of questions, the word question is quest eye on. So I like to say the quality of our questions constitutes the quality of our life experience. So the more we can fine-tune our question asking and ask the right questions, oftentimes it's not about the answer, it's about the question. So the better you get your questions, the more you can direct yourself on that quest in life toward what it is that you want to accomplish and achieve in life. So
there's a lot of people putting that question to themselves as far as, what quest am I on? And I think that's a good way to put it. And I like forums like this to where you can engage with others and bounce ideas off of one another. And if it's not part of your niche, does it connect to something else? And then we're just all going, hey, have you talked to so-and-so? Have you talked to so-and-so? And then now we're part of an entrepreneurial platform, and then everything comes together. But because you didn't go outside of what you're on to, meander around, it's kind of like chasing a puppy that's smelling a squirrel that's run all the way around the yard. We're going to go in some circles and have some tangents, but be aware of them, and then really drill that focus and have other colleagues that can help you stay focused and get focused. And then that's a fun process. And then the camaraderie is nice. And you mentioned it earlier, the co-opetition. There's very few that I know that are, straight up would-be competitors. The market is so big, and the amount of suppliers and professionals is so small, it's almost like there is no competition. But there's very few colleagues that I have that I couldn't call up and ask a question related to a project, and then vice versa. And so it is enjoyable that way.
Absolutely. And to back up the supportive element of staying focused and niching down and getting the support you need, we've actually created a resource on hempaware.com, and it's an ebook called Do One Thing Hemp. And Do One Thing is an acronym, DOT. So we call it Make Your Hemp Dot. And if we all put our dot on the map, we can create this connection, this network, or this grid of consciousness, and all be in our lanes doing our best and connect to each other and transform the world together with hemp by each one of us making our dot and doing one thing. So if anybody listening to this is struggling with all of the hemp opportunities out there, chasing the different rabbits, check out that free resource and see some of the tools and resources that we provide to help you stay focused on what you're best at with hemp.
I love how that plays right back into the connect the dot. That's fun.
Well, Ray, it's been a pleasure and an honor to connect with you. I really look forward to our future working together, and definitely want to have you on a future hemp episode to get deeper into the real benefits of hemp and getting your hands on it. As a parting topic, how can people find you? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you and get involved in everything that you're doing?
Sure, I appreciate that, and I've enjoyed it as well. It's been quite an honor and a privilege to have the conversation. I live on LinkedIn. I'm there quite a bit. If you do message me, I respond to those. And then do let me know that you found, so you're not just some spamming bot, but I do look at that there. And then, I'm pretty well out there. We do have a YouTube channel through the school to where we bring in and try to put those professional tips to where people can learn on there. And then the platform, the community on Hemp Build Mag, you can click the community, set up a free profile, and then for sure join the trade association to where we're a cheap date. An individual can join in as under $100, and then they can elevate to the professional level of usage that they want to. But that trade association is a very valuable resource, and then that'll let you connect with who you need to connect with. And then I'm happy to have those conversations as well. So cost you a cup of coffee, and then I'd be happy to share.
Excellent. Well, thank you for tuning in to another hemp episode of HempAware Radio. If you guys want to hear me talk about other topics or interview other hemp experts and hemp-entrepreneurs, just send me an email, support@hempaware.com, and we'll make sure to cover those topics that you care most about. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning into another show. We'll see you next time. And thanks again, Ray. Loved having you.
Thanks.